You want to know what's truly maddening about this entire Cleveland Browns situation? It's not just that they're losing games. It's not even that they're wasting a generational defense. It's that every single person watching this team, from casual fans to hardcore analysts to former players breaking down film, can see exactly what needs to happen. Everyone except the people actually making decisions inside that building. We're watching organizational paralysis in real time, where the fear of being wrong has completely overtaken the pursuit of being right, and the cost of that paralysis is being paid by players who are giving everything they have, only to watch it mean absolutely nothing. Dillon Gabriel takes the field every Sunday, and within the first quarter, you know how it's going to go. There's this moment that happens in almost every game where he drops back, scans the field, and you can literally see the panic set in. His feet stop moving, his eyes lock onto one receiver, and then he either forces a throw into coverage that has no business being attempted, or he holds the ball too long and takes a sack that kills the drive. It's the same pattern every single week. No adjustment, no improvement, no sign that he's processing the game any faster or reading defenses any better. This isn't a rookie going through growing pains where you see flashes of brilliance mixed with understandable mistakes. This is a player who looks fundamentally unable to operate at this level. What makes it even worse is watching the defense have to go right back onto the field after another 3 and out. These guys are playing their hearts out, making incredible plays, creating turnovers, and keeping the Browns in games they have no business being competitive in. And their reward is getting maybe 90 seconds of rest before they have to go back out there and do it all over again. That's not sustainable. That's how you end up with injured players in a demoralized locker room. That's how you waste what could have been a special season for a historically great defense. And for what? So the coaching staff doesn't have to admit they were wrong about their quarterback evaluation. The Shedeur Sanders piece of this puzzle is what pushes it from frustrating to absolutely infuriating. Here's a kid who came into the league with legitimate buzz. Scouts who watched his tape saw arm talent. They saw leadership. They saw a guy who'd played in big games and delivered when the pressure was highest. Yeah, there were questions. There are always questions with prospects, but the physical tools were undeniable. The football IQ was evident, and the Browns got him in the 5th round, which is essentially free in NFL terms. 5th round picks are dart throws, they're lottery tickets. Most of them don't make the roster past their rookie year. So when you hit on one, when you find a guy with real talent that late, you're supposed to be ecstatic. You're supposed to develop him aggressively and see what you have. Instead, the Browns have treated Shedeur like he's radioactive. From the moment training camp started, it was clear he wasn't getting a fair shot. While Dillon Gabriel was running with the ones and getting every opportunity to establish himself, Shedeur was relegated to 2nd and 3rd team reps. He'd throw a beautiful pass in practice, and it wouldn't matter. He'd show off his arm strength and accuracy, and it still wouldn't move the needle. The depth chart was predetermined, and nothing he did was going to change it. That's not competition. That's not evaluation. That's organizational stubbornness disguised as process. And now we're supposed to believe he's hurt. The back injury that conveniently keeps him out of practice, but not so hurt that he can't fly across the country to visit family. Look, I'm not saying the injury isn't real. I'm not a doctor. I don't have access to medical reports, but the timing is awfully convenient, isn't it? Right when pressure is building for him to get playing time, suddenly there's an injury concern that keeps him sidelined without being serious enough to put him on injured reserve. It's the perfect excuse to maintain the status quo without having to answer uncomfortable questions about why he's not playing. The insider reports about what's happening behind the scenes are fascinating because they confirm what everyone watching from the outside already suspected. There's tension in that building. There are people within the organization who know this isn't working and are frustrated that changes aren't being made. You can hear it in how reporters phrase their questions. You can see it in the body language during press conferences. Kevin Stefanski stands up there and gives these carefully worded non-answers about sticking with the process and believing in their guys, and everyone in the room knows it's nonsense, but he keeps saying it because that's what coaches do when they're out of answers. They fall back on platitudes and hope nobody presses too hard. The comparison to how other teams have handled similar situations this season is damning. Take the Patriots with Drake May. They started the year with Jacoby Brissett, which made sense. He's a veteran who could take the hits while May learned the offense and got acclimated to the NFL. But when it became clear that Brissett wasn't winning games and May was ready for more, they made the the switch. They didn't wait until the season was completely lost. They didn't stick with the veteran out of stubbornness or pride. They made a smart organizational decision based on what gave them the best chance to develop their future franchise quarterback. That's what competent teams do. Or look at what Denver did with Bo Nix. They committed to him from day one, built their offense around his strengths, and accepted that there would be growing pains along the way. Has he been perfect? Of course not. He's a rookie, but he's getting better every week because he's actually playing. He's learning from his mistakes in real games against real competition. He's developing chemistry with his receivers and learning to read NFL defenses at game speed. You can't replicate that in practice. You can't simulate it with scout team reps. The only way to develop a young quarterback is to let him play. The Browns had a chance to do this right, and they blew it at every turn. They should have created legitimate competition in training camp. They should have split first-team reps evenly between Gabriel and Shedeur and let the best man win. They should have used the preseason to evaluate both guys in game situations. Instead, they decided Gabriel was their guy before anyone ever put on pads. And they've stubbornly stuck with that decision even as mountains of evidence pile up showing it was wrong. That's not conviction. That's not confidence in your evaluation process. That's ego preventing you from admitting a mistake. Here's what really gets me about the schedule argument. The Browns have a golden opportunity sitting right in front of them over the next month. The teams they're playing are beatable. The stakes couldn't be lower since the season is already lost. The defense is good enough to keep games close even if the offense struggles. These are literally perfect conditions to see what you have in Shedeur Sanders. If he plays well, fantastic. You might have found your quarterback of the future without having to spend a high draft pick on one. If he struggles, fine, at least you know what he is, and you can draft accordingly, but instead of seizing this opportunity, the Browns are going to waste it running out the same quarterback who's proven week after week that he's not the answer. Think about what message this sends to the locker room, too. You've got defensive players who are watching the offense fail repeatedly and wondering why no changes are being made. You've got offensive players who are frustrated with how the season is going and questioning the coaching staff's decision-making. And you've got Shedeur, a young player who's supposed to believe in the organization and buy into the program, watching as he gets passed over week after week despite doing everything asked of him. How is that supposed to build a winning culture? How is that supposed to make players believe in the leadership? All it does is create resentment and cynicism. The financial aspect of this situation is something that doesn't get discussed enough, but matters enormously. Both Gabriel and Shedeur are on rookie contracts, which means they're making essentially nothing by NFL standards. That's supposed to be a massive advantage. When you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, you can spend money elsewhere on the roster. You can build a complete team instead of having $40 million tied up in one position. But you only get that advantage if your cheap quarterback can actually play. If both of your rookie quarterbacks are unplayable, then you're right back where you started, looking for a veteran or drafting another quarterback high and hoping he works out. And speaking of the draft, let's talk about what happens if the Browns keep winning meaningless games down the stretch. Every win pushes them down the draft board. Every victory against terrible teams like the Jets, Raiders, and Titans costs them position in what could be one of the best quarterback classes in recent memory. If they end up picking 7th or 8th instead of 2nd or 3rd, they might miss out on the guy they really want. They might have to trade up and give away future assets. Or they might have to settle for a lesser prospect and hope they can develop him, all because they were too stubborn to make obvious changes when the season was already lost. The Kevin Stefanski situation has to be addressed because he's the common denominator in all of this dysfunction. This is year 5 of his tenure in Cleveland, and what exactly has he accomplished? One playoff appearance where they lost in the divisional round, multiple seasons of mediocre offensive production despite having talented players, a complete inability to develop quarterbacks or create any kind of consistent identity on that side of the ball. At what point do we stop giving him credit for that one decent season and start holding him accountable for the years of underperformance since? The play calling has been predictable and conservative. The offensive schemes don't put players in position to succeed. The adjustments during games are minimal to non-existent. These are coaching problems. Stefanski came to Cleveland with a reputation as an offensive innovator, someone who could scheme around limitations and maximize his personnel. What we've seen instead is a coach who runs a vanilla offense, refuses to adapt to his players' strengths, and makes the same mistakes over and over while expecting different results. That's not coaching. That's stubbornness masquerading as consistency. and the quarterback development specifically has been a complete disaster under his watch. Baker Mayfield had his best season before Stefanski arrived, then regressed under his coaching. They burned through multiple veterans who've gone on to play better elsewhere. Now they've got 2 rookies who aren't developing because the system isn't designed to help young quarterbacks succeed. At some point, you have to stop blaming the players and look at the coach. If everyone who touches your offense gets worse, maybe the problem isn't the ingredients. Maybe it's the recipe. The media availability sessions have become almost painful to watch because the disconnect between what's being said and what's actually happening is so vast. Stefanski stands at the podium and talks about seeing improvement, about guys competing hard, about sticking with the process. Meanwhile, anyone who actually watches the games can see that nothing is improving. The offense looks exactly the same as it did in week 1. The same problems keep showing up, the same mistakes keep getting made. But he just keeps repeating the same talking points like a broken record, hoping nobody notices that the emperor has no clothes. The fan reaction to all of this has evolved in interesting ways. Early in the season, there was anger. People were upset about the losses and frustrated with how the team looked. But now there's just apathy and dark humor. Browns fans have moved past anger into acceptance that this is just who their team is. They make jokes about Dillon Gabriel's hospital balls. They create memes about Shedeur sitting on the bench. They laugh at the dysfunction because laughing is easier than caring. And when your fan base reaches that point, when they've emotionally checked out and are just treating your team as entertainment for the wrong reasons, that's a crisis. Stadium attendance is dropping noticeably. The energy at home games is non-existent compared to the start of the season. Television ratings are down. Social media engagement is mostly people roasting the team rather than supporting it. These are all measurable signs that the fan base is giving up on this season and questioning whether ownership and management have any idea what they're doing. And the scary part for the Browns is that once you lose your fans, once they decide they'd rather spend their Sundays doing literally anything else, it's incredibly hard to win them back. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. The Myles Garrett situation should be setting off alarm bells throughout the organization. You have a Hall of Fame caliber player in his prime, someone who could be the face of your franchise for the next 5 years, and he's watching his career get wasted by organizational incompetence. How long before he starts wondering if he should be somewhere else? How long before he requests a trade or starts making his frustration public? Elite players don't want to waste their careers losing. They want to compete for championships. And right now, the Browns are giving Garrett no reason to believe that's going to happen anytime soon. The same goes for the other defensive players. Denzel Ward is a top-tier cornerback. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is developing into a star linebacker. Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill are a solid safety duo. These guys are playing at an elite level collectively, creating one of the best defenses in football. And they're watching it mean nothing because the offense can't do its job. That breeds resentment. That creates divisions within the team. Eventually, those defensive players are going to start questioning why they're killing themselves every Sunday when the coaching staff won't make obvious changes to help the team win. Let's talk about what should happen versus what probably will happen, because there's a massive gap between those two things. What should happen is obvious. The Browns should start Shedeur Sanders this week against the Jets. They should commit to him for the rest of the season, build the offense around his strengths, and see what they actually have. If he's good, they save themselves from having to draft a quarterback high. If he's not, they get a better draft pick and go get their guy in April. Either way, they end the season with actual information instead of questions. What will probably happen is more of the same. Gabriel will start against the Jets and probably play poorly. The Browns might win anyway because their defense is that good and the Jets are that dysfunctional. That win will be used to justify staying the course for another week. Then they'll play the Raiders and the same thing will happen. Maybe they beat the Titans too, and suddenly they're telling themselves they've won 3 straight and things are turning around. Never mind that they beat 3 terrible teams. Never mind that the offense still looks awful. They'll find a way to convince convince themselves that progress is being made. Then they'll hit a tougher stretch, get blown out by a real team, and finally make the switch to Shedeur in like week 15. He'll get 2 or 3 starts to close out the season, probably play reasonably well because expectations will be zero and the competition will be weak, and then the Browns will spend the entire offseason debating whether he showed enough to be the guy or whether they need to draft another quarterback. It'll be the exact same uncertainty they had going into this season, just with different names. That's the Browns cycle. That's what they do. The saddest part about all of this is that it's completely avoidable. The Browns have the pieces to be competitive. They have an elite defense. They have a solid running game. They have enough weapons on offense to be functional. What they don't have is competent decision-making at the highest levels. They don't have a coaching staff willing to admit mistakes and adjust. They don't have a front office with the courage to make tough calls when necessary. And until that changes, until there's a complete philosophical overhaul of how this organization operates, they're gonna keep finding new and creative ways to disappoint everyone. You've got 2 rookie quarterbacks on cheap contracts. One has proven he can't do it. The other hasn't been given a chance. The season is lost. The schedule is favorable. Every condition is perfect for making a change. But they won't do it because that would require acknowledging they were wrong. It would require having uncomfortable conversations about evaluation processes and decision making. It would require courage and conviction that this organization has never demonstrated. So instead, we'll keep watching the same mistakes get repeated, the same excuses get recycled, and the same dysfunction get perpetuated. That's the Cleveland Browns in a nutshell. The perfect case study in how not to run an NFL franchise, playing out in real time for everyone to see. And the worst part is knowing that next year we'll probably be having the exact same conversations about different players because the fundamental problems never get addressed. They just get papered over with new names and new hope that inevitably turns into the same old disappointment.